Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name is Amy, and I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the NIV, and we are in the book of Numbers, which is part of the Mosaic Law. We are in chapter 19. We have had a rebellion by the other Levites, an entire family line swallowed up by an earthquake, and Aaron standing is a barrier between the living and the dead, stopping God's plague. So now, the water of cleansing, chapter 19. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is a requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Give it to Eleazar the priest. It is to be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Then Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. While he watches, the heifer is to be burned, its hide, flesh, blood, and offal. The priest is to take some cedar wood, hyssop, and a scarlet wool, and throw them onto the burning heifer." Now, there was something similar than this, but with a bird when you were trying to see if somebody was innocent or something like that, or to purify a space. After that, the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He may then come into the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean till evening. So he should really go to his house and not talk to anybody or touch anything. The man who burns it must also wash his clothes and bathe his water, and he too will be unclean till evening. A man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They shall be kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing. It is for purification from sin. The man who gathers up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he too will be unclean till evening. This will be a lasting ordinance for both the Israelites and for the aliens living among them. Whoever touches the dead body of anyone will be unclean for 7 days. So we call that sitting Shiva. He must purify himself with water on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Whoever touches the dead body of anyone and fails to purify himself defiles the Lord's tabernacle. The person must be cut off from Israel, because the water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on them. He is unclean. His uncleanness remains on him. So they have to go get this particular water sprinkled on them. Anyone out in the open who touches someone who has been killed with a sword, or someone who has died a natural death, or anyone who touches a human bone or a grave will be unclean for 7 days. It's unfortunate for archaeologists. But then they didn't really have those during this time. And this would really be more like, don't try to rob the dead. For the unclean person, put some ashes from the burned purification offering into a jar and pour fresh water over them. Then a man who is ceremonially clean is to take some hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle the tent and all its furnishings and the people who were there. He must also sprinkle any one who has touched a human bone or a grave, or someone who has been killed, or someone who has died a natural death. So all the ways that there can be a dead person. The man who is clean is to sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd and 7th days, and on the 7th day he is to purify him. The person being cleansed with water, cleansed, must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and that evening he will be clean. But if the person who is unclean does not purify himself, he will be cut off from the community because he defiles the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on him, and he is unclean. This is a lasting ordinance for them. The man who sprinkles the water of cleansing must also wash his clothes, and anyone who touches the water of cleansing will be unclean till evening. Anything that an unclean person touches becomes unclean, and anyone who touches it becomes unclean till evening. So if you are unclean and you enter a house, anything you touch in that house, anybody else who touches it after you now is unclean. Think of it as like how we always perceived the game of cooties when we were a small child. In this case, though, they're trying to keep them from biohazard contaminants, because these are basically people who, well, because they've been slaves for 400 years, they haven't had to think for themselves. They know as much as your small child would about what you wouldn't want them to touch that they might happen upon in the wilderness. Like in case of some sort of dead body or dead, like, please don't touch the dead thing. Like, that's a legit thing that parents have to say to small children. So that's kind of what God's doing here. Until the next video, friends.